My name is Jason Gage. I'm the city manager here in Salina, and I appreciate everyone taking the time to come out in the cold. I know you'd probably rather be doing something else, but I'm glad that you're here. What we want to do is I want to talk about the city's proposed clean indoor air ordinance. And I know that we have people here that will be on both sides of it. And like I said, I appreciate you being here because we want to hear what you have to say. What I will do first is I'll kind of go through the highlights of the ordinance for those of you that may not be that familiar with it. We have copies. If you haven't received a copy, there's a pile right up here. Please feel free to come up and take one. And then after that, what we will do is we will answer your questions and take any input that you have. And I will emphasize that I want you to be very open if you have a concern or if you support it and what your reasons are, because what we're intending to do is to take all this input and put it together and provide it to the City Commission. And the City Commission will take final action on this on the 26th. So we have a little bit of time, and that input's very, very important. So that's why we're here, and we really encourage it. We also have a forum that's scheduled for next Tuesday. So if you have friends or family or someone that's interested but they could not be here this evening for whatever reason, please let them know that we'll have another forum just like this, and hopefully we can get their input as well. Go ahead and get started. Jack, you want to grab the lights? There you go. Okay. On January 12th of this year, not long ago, the City Commission passed on first reading the ordinance, which is numbered 09-10481, which prohibits smoking inside public buildings. The main purpose of this is to promote public health by decreasing citizens' exposure to secondhand smoke and to create a smoke-free environment for workers. A little background, in 2002, Salina was Kansas's first community to adopt any type of ordinance that restricted smoking in any public place. It was specific to restaurants and basically prohibited smoking during certain times of the day and had certain exceptions. Since then, at least 26 Kansas cities and 2 counties have adopted really broader reaching ordinances that went further into buildings within a community. These cities, there's a long list, but some of them include Garden City, Heston, Lawrence, Leawood, Lenexa, Manhattan, Newton, and Wichita. Manhattan is the most recent that's been approved. Some of the basic provisions of the ordinance that's been proposed is that it prohibits smoking in all areas of a building, either where the public or employees would be expected to occupy. The clear exception is in private homes. This ordinance does not go into private homes at all. It includes such areas as lobbies, hallways, and break rooms, as well as the other areas you would already expect. It includes all city-owned buildings and vehicles, and so that's important too. The commissioners wanted to make sure that if we do this, it does include city-owned buildings and vehicles. It includes all buildings of other governmental entities as well, so it's pretty far-reaching in that way. It includes vehicles used for public transportation. So it would include, for example, a taxi, if you were to ride in a taxi or a bus. Some of those entities already have their own rules, but this ordinance would include those. It includes all restaurants, bars, bingo parlors, and bowling alleys. Includes all private clubs and fraternal organizations. I do want to make a point because this was a confusing issue from the last conversation, and there was a thought that there was an exemption for private clubs, and I want to make it very, very clear that the language change that was approved as an amendment did not exempt private clubs. The confusion was that there was language that dealt with the areas where the public would occupy in a private club or fraternal organization. And so if you just looked at that part of the ordinance, it looked like that it would only apply to those areas and that the, in essence, private areas would not be included under the ordinance. But when you look at the ordinance as a whole and you look at the employment aspect of it, it really took you into the rest of the building. So the amendment was intended to just eliminate that whole confusion and say all places and private clubs, and also bring in the employment. So there was not an exception to that. And that's very important because many of you may be members of private clubs, and I want to make that point because for those that are members or on a board of a private club, it's important for them to know that, because if they don't, they may not show up to provide a comment, and it's important for us to get those comments. So if you know anyone, please feel free to let them know. It includes the area within 10 feet of the building's primary entrance. The original ordinance had 20. The Commission amended that to 10 at the last meeting. Smoking is allowable in outdoor eating areas, and they have to be unenclosed. We specifically talked about the eating areas, but in essence, any area that's not fully enclosed would not be included under the definition. Building owners and managers are responsible for restricting smoking, installing signage, and training their employees. Enforcement of the ordinance would start 90 days after its approval, if in fact it's approved. The fines for violations in the ordinance would be a minimum of $50 for the first violation, at least $100 for the second violation, and at least $200 for any further violations. And the second and further violations would start, the time frame, it's a 12-month time frame that would start after the first violation. The schedule we have for consideration, we've already had the January 12th time frame, which was Monday. There was first reading on the ordinance, and there was action by the City Commission at that time. And the ordinance with the two minor amendments that we talked about was approved on a 3-2 vote. And I will say with that, sometimes you hear when the people talk about governing bodies in general, they say, well, their mind's made up and so forth. And I think many of them made it very, very clear that their minds aren't made up. And when you see a split vote, you know their minds aren't made up. And so they're really trying to think through this issue. And it is a difficult issue. The first public forum this evening. The second public forum, again, on January 20th at the same location right here at the same time. And then on the 26th is a scheduled second reading, which is the final action. So that's when, if approved, that ordinance would actually be approved by that action. And then there's a publication date after that. And so we do have the information that you have on our website. We'll have a copy of this presentation on the website as well. Sometimes it's a little easier to explain it from this, from the shorter version. And we encourage you to, if you want to look at that information, if you want to give that to someone, please feel free to access the website and do that. If you or anyone else has any questions, maybe something you don't think about tonight, feel free to call us, send an email, whatever you're most comfortable with. Please feel free to do that, and we'll try to answer that question. And that's a quick overview. One thing I will say too is that from a policy-making perspective, one of the reasons this is so difficult, and I think that we'll hear this tonight, is because there's really two primary issues with this type of an ordinance. One is the public health aspect and the impact it could have on public health. And what's happening is we have to weigh that with what we'll hear are real strong interests with regards to private property rights, and those are very important as well. So when you put yourself in the seat of a policymaker, of a city commissioner, that's what they have to struggle with, and they're not easy issues, quite honestly. And just like you, your commissioners probably know people that have feelings on both sides of this. And so I ask you to keep that in mind. But what we want to do now, I'm going to come around and get out of the way, and we'll have you, if you have questions, to feel free to ask those questions. Any question. It could be an interpretive question, and we'll try to answer those questions the best that we can. And we have our city's legal counsel, Greg Binkson, here. So if I get stumped, I can always say, hey, Greg, help me out on this one. And we'll try to help you with those. And also just any public input. I mean, if you come up and just say, I just don't like it for whatever reason, we want to know what that reason is. And the reason is probably the most important thing, because, again, it's as hard for the commissioners, and your reasoning is very important to them. And so, again, we'll take all this input, we will inventory it for them, they will have that for that second reading, and certainly everyone's invited to attend that second reading if that's what you'd like to do. So with that, I'm going to come around the corner here, and we will ask that the folks come up to the podium. The reason for that, I know that a lot of people don't like to do that, but the reason is because we felt it was important to cover this, or have community access television cover this, so that those at home could see and hear the input, could learn a little bit more, and possibly provide some input themselves at a later date. And that'll help us to get a record of everything. So with that, I will scoot around and we'll have you come on up. If you could please provide your name and your address. This will be somewhat similar to a commission meeting from that perspective.
Thank you very much. My name is Graham Bailey. I'm not a Salina resident. I'm one of those dreaded people from out of town, so I'm going to jump up here quick because I have to drive back to Lawrence tonight. I'm the Vice President of Public Relations and Corporate Communications for Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas. I've been invited here tonight by the healthcare clean air advocate people to try to briefly tie a line between smoking, secondhand smoke, clean indoor air, and healthcare premiums. I think we all know that healthcare costs are escalating. Certainly the commissioners know that they are for the employees that they're dealing with. Right now in America we have 47 million people that are uninsured, 300,000 in Kansas. Kansas last year was notified we are one of 10 states whose uninsured rate is getting larger. Only one of 10 states. In order to attack healthcare costs, the cost of health insurance premiums, we have to attack the affordability of healthcare. I know there are many, many sides to this issue, and I'm not here to speak to any of them except as a health insurance professional to talk about the tie between lifestyle habits and the cost of healthcare. Health insurance is very expensive. That's because healthcare is very expensive. Healthcare is very expensive because we use so many services. We use so many services because we don't practice wellness as well as we should. I think everyone should be pretty comfortable with the facts now that exposure to smoke and exposure to secondhand smoke is not healthy. It has a very, very negative impact on a person's health. I'd like to make it clear I'm not here in any way to villainize smokers. Smokers are not villains. I can't think of anyone who enjoys a good cigar more than I do, the right place at the right time. But secondhand smoke has proven to be every bit as dangerous to us as smoking is, and it's very disruptive to holding down the cost of health care. I'm not going to throw a lot of facts and figures at you as it's pretty obvious you guys have gone down that trail before, but I'd like to make a couple comments. The American Academy of Actuaries, these are the people who actually configure healthcare premiums, say that very conservatively 10 to 12% of every one of the dollars of your premiums that you pay is in direct relationship to smoking. Either direct smoking or indirect smoking. My local actuaries in Topeka 100% agree with that. As an example of some things that have happened that we look at, a smoking ban in Salina, Montana. They enacted that in the first 6 months. Heart attack admissions into the hospitals dropped by 40%. Excuse me, yeah, by 40%. There was a story in the Associated Press last week that in Pueblo, Colorado, in the first 3 years of their smoking ban, heart attack admissions dropped 41%. And I'm bringing this to light for a couple reasons. Number one, a lot of people don't think that the smoking issue really affects them because either A, they're not bothered when they go into public places and other people are smoking, or because they just don't go out that much in public where they think has an effect on them. But I can tell you that it affects you every time you pay a health care premium. It affects you every time you pay taxes for the Medicaid program here in Kansas, even the S-CHIP program here in Kansas, the Health Wave program. Smoking bans are designed to cut rates and to also reduce exposure to secondhand smoke. A widely recognized cause of smoking is lung cancer, but a ban's effect on heart disease can be very immediate, as these two studies that I just quoted show. The lung cancer, some of those things, the asthmatic conditions, it takes 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years before you see results of that. Obviously, with heart attacks, with admissions, coronary heart disease, the effects of a ban in a community which allows the people to go out without having to breathe in secondhand smoke can be very immediate. Smoking, whether it's primary or secondhand, damages the lining of blood vessels and increases the kind of blood clotting that leads to heart attacks, and it has a very immediate effect. Another fact, in Italy, I found this very interesting. I had no idea that Italy had a non-smoking ban. They do. And public smoking ban was enacted. After they did that, their coronary events dropped from people from ages 35 to 64 by 11% the first year. For people over the age of 65, it dropped 8%. Another thing to think about, I think, for employers, for city government, for county government, a non-medical note as to productivity. I pulled up this fact the other day, and that is the U.S. Centers of Disease Control, the CDC, and Prevention estimates smoking costs the U.S. economy $92 billion, it's with a B, dollars a year in productivity because of illnesses that people have and they don't get to work, to say nothing about, I assume to a certain extent, probably taking smoking breaks. And $4.6 billion a year in lost wages. To me, it's a pretty common sense thing. If we really want to make Kansas healthier, and the Kansas Health Policy Authority is out there with many things. The governor's been very active. The insurance commissioner's been very active. The Kansas legislature is active, and they'll probably look at this issue on a statewide basis. But almost everything they look at to try to hold down the cost of health care and make health insurance premiums more affordable has to do with infusing money into the situation somewhere. This is something that can be done that virtually costs no money. It makes everybody healthier, and it has a positive effect on the community. And that's really the only tie-in that I wanted to make today. I would certainly stand for any questions. I don't know what your procedure is here. If not, I'll hit the road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going from the tall to the short. My name is Maria Charvat, and I live at 2606 Plantation Drive in Salina. And I'm a former educator in our schools, and retired, actually. And I was very excited when the kids at school were so excited when we got the restaurant smoking ban. For some of those children, that was the only time they got to go out and eat, or they got to eat with their parents or grandparents or family members without cigarette smoke. Also, it was kind of exciting when the kids didn't have any idea that people used to be able to smoke in the mall and different places. So we've come a long ways, and I appreciate that. About a year and a half ago, something very unfortunate happened to me, and I fell and I broke both my feet. And so I was temporarily handicapped for quite a while, and I was in a wheelchair. I was in a walker, and then I advanced onto a cane. That was a temporary handicap, but let me tell you, I was very thankful for the government regulations that we had allowing me handicapped accessibility to places. So without the government regulation, I would have pretty well been stuck at home for a long time. It would have driven everybody crazy. We need government regulations sometimes for things. I have what I call now a permanent handicap, and that is I have a lot of allergies and I have asthma. And because of that asthma, I cannot be in places where there is smoking. I cannot go bowling. I can't go play bingo. I'm not a drinker, but there have been times when I would have liked to have gone to bars because of the entertainment that was there, and those things are denied to me because of my permanent handicap. And so for that reason, and many others, I really hope that the Commission looks at enacting a total ordinance for smoke-free places. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Brenda Jensen. I live at 2059 Wesley here in Salina. And on the smoking issue, one of the things I'd like to address is the economy right now. It's in pretty bad shape, I think everyone will agree. Last thing we need to do is chase more businesses out. I do feel myself that if this does pass, it's going to close a few more bars in town, possibly other businesses. And if that happens, it doesn't only put that bar owner out of business. It's going to affect everybody, from the owner to the bartender to the waitress to the service people, such as the soda, the alcohol, the food industry. That affects everybody there as well. The lady previously spoke that she can't go out to bars. There's 2 bars in town, I know. 3 bars?
There's 3 bars.
That do not allow smoking. Along with all the restaurants, they don't allow smoking now. And even Chili's, Carlos Kelly's, several of those, they have bars in them as well. that if you just want to go have a drink, you can. No smoking. It also sounds like this will affect motels, hotels, places like the Wild West, the Carnival crew when they come to town. That will be affected because it may not be affected now, but you're not going to be able to sit in the grandstands eventually and have a cigarette while you're watching the Derby or the bull riding or whatever event is going on because it's a public place. We already pay a lot of taxes, the smokers and everyone else. This is only going to make it even worse. We pay our taxes. The gentleman previously was talking about health care costs. A lot of that is also due to lawsuits. And I know that if you ever look in the paper, there's a lot of lawsuits. That has to increase the health insurance. I also know that cancer can also be considered hereditary. I knew 2 gentlemen from my hometown. Both of them died of throat cancer. Both brothers. They never smoked a day in their life. Didn't go anywhere that was smoking. One was a plumber. One worked outside at a lumber yard. I've been here in Salina for over 12 and a half years, and I'm a smoker. Been a smoker for all those years, and I haven't missed more than 2 days of work due to smoking at all. And I've known a lot of people younger than me, and they've missed a lot more. If this passes, where are we going to go to next? Are we going to fight and do something with alcohol, caffeine? Are we going to go to include obese people, the elderly, the young children? Because I don't see that we're going to stop. We'll just keep trying to pick on something, and we're just going to continue to go at it. We have the smoking ban in the restaurants. I think it should be left there and left alone there. And if not, let the business owner make that decision. Thank you.
Ms. Jensen? Real quick, Ms. Jensen, I need clarification. You mentioned grandstands. Where were you referring to?
Like if you would go to the Derby at the carnival time. I know right now it doesn't sound like in this that it'll be prohibited,
right.
But we've already had this smoking ban passed in 2002, and now we're wanting to go stronger. In a couple more years, if this passes now, a couple more years, I'm sure it'll be banned then.
I see what you're saying. Thank you.
My name is James Gardner. I'm an internist in Manhattan, Kansas, and was involved in the ordinance efforts in Manhattan. Want to say one positive thing about Salina in that I think the fact that Salina had an ordinance did affect our process in Manhattan some. I know a couple of years ago we brought an ordinance to discuss, and the current ordinance in Salina was brought up as a compromised issue, and it was not voted for because we felt it was inadequate, and the City Commission did too. Our City Commission, who is a political organization, more or less, being elected officials, I think had a hard time with this, and even in Manhattan, with our current ordinance, it wasn't one that the City Commission themselves felt comfortable in passing, and they turned this over to the people. The ordinance that was actually accepted in Manhattan is one that was developed essentially by the people who wanted an ordinance. This ordinance was quite strong. It was about the same kind of thing as an Iowa State ordinance, and there's some in Kansas City. It includes a little more than what you have here. Prior to this time, being a member of the Chamber of Commerce, I actually went to the Chamber of Commerce and asked for a resolution to have indoor smoke ban, and the Chamber of Commerce voted to do this, to support this. When it got down to the details, we included patios, and that was a contentious issue. And because of that, there was opposition to our ordinance in the community. The opposition was fairly aggressive in their approach to it, and tried to highlight the things that seemed to be offensive to the, I think mostly the Aggieville people. And so there's clear-cut understanding of this in the election. With the election, there was 56% of the population who voted for the ordinance as it is now. And I'd say I think you could take about half the others that wanted an ordinance. In fact, those that opposed the ordinance had an ordinance similar to this one that they wanted to put through. And they said, if you didn't vote for the one, we'll do this. The Chamber of Commerce actually was supportive of that alternative ordinance. So I think it's important to understand that in Manhattan, anyway, the business community there had come to grips with this issue, and they're supportive of it. They would like to have this a statewide sort of thing, which in their mind I think would be more fair to businesses. Since the ordinance, there's a couple of reflections I can make. There's a VFW in Wamego. There's one in Ogden. There's one in Manhattan. And for those that smoke, some of them have gone to Ogden and built up their group, which was kind of suffering, maybe comparatively speaking, and also Wamego. And so those things can occur. The one in Manhattan lost a few members. But outside of that, I have not heard of any significant things myself, and I've had many patients where they have explained how happy they were. I can count on my hand about 5 here in the last 2 or 3 weeks who mentioned to me that they'd gone to eat in Aggieville and they hadn't done that for a long time. And they were very happy to do that, and happy that they had this ordinance in place. I think the business issue is something to consider. The property rights, as you mentioned, is something to consider. One of the questions I asked one of our councilmen was, what happens in Manhattan if you don't cut your grass? And I don't know what the ordinances are here in Salina, but in Manhattan, if you don't cut your grass and the neighbor complains and it gets up so high, the city comes in and cuts it for you, and then they give you a bill. And I said, private property? My property? You mean you've got an ordinance in town that does that? And I asked him what the issue was and why such an ordinance would come into. And he said, well, it's the property value. You're going to affect the property value. Now, I had a heart attack about 3 years ago. And in terms of the issues of freedoms and such, there's a place that's not far from me that from my office, someone might call me to come down there to eat and want to have a lunch there, business friend or something like that. And it was not smoke-free. And the issue that I was faced with is, do I tell them no? Do I tell them I'd like to have you go invite me somewhere else? If I were to go into that place, within 30 minutes, I've increased my chances of recurrent heart attack or replacement of another stent. That's basically been shown because of the fact that the platelets get a little sticky if you've been exposed to secondhand smoke for over 30 minutes. That's an immediate issue with me in terms of risk. And so I think to myself, our country, in the Declaration of Independence, said, we believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I think of life in this issue. Certainly a lot more important than grass. It's really a public health issue that is real. Liberty. Well, the businessman has a license to practice business. And in that situation, that businessman is responsible to the public for whatever issues are there. They have to have food that's not poisoned or I don't think they'd allow a brawl to go on in their facility without calling the police to come and take care of it. And so, in terms of liberty, my liberties are being somewhat restricted because there wasn't such an ordinance in a place that's licensed to be safe to go in and do business. Pursuit of happiness? I'll tell you, I have seen hundreds of people in the last 30 years who either because of secondhand smoke and have never smoked before die of lung cancer, or people who have suffered from heart attacks and such related to this issue. Now, this ordinance doesn't address the smoker. It addresses where they are. And in my mind, it just says, you need to listen and understand the truth of these things that have taken years to discover and think, do I have a right to smoke in front of a person that may actually cause a heart attack or cause their asthma to flare up? Cost-wise, I had a patient who went to one of our bowling alleys because he loved to bowl, and his friend puffed in his face, and he got an acute exacerbation of his chronic lung disease. And I took care of him for about 2 weeks in the hospital. That's about $180,000 or something. That's a fair amount of money that was his cost. And that was just because he went ahead and visited and had that acute occurrence. It is a lot of money. It was mentioned already that in Pueblo they've proven these issues, the benefit to public health. And so I think I understand what's going on here and the anger that some people have because it has changed. And you know, what I've learned for a long time now, I've been studying this more, and that is that smoking itself is a habituation. It's an addictive process. And so our thoughts about these things and changing will affect us, will affect how we look at it. And I think this kind of ordinance doesn't really deal with that so much as, except for one student I had who was trying to quit smoking, and the only time he really felt really a strong urge to smoke was when he was in a bar and had a drink. Because other people were smoking, he would kind of be driven to a cigarette at that point. And he's kind of happy with the ordinance in that regard, that he'll have more success in trying to quit. I think we should respect the issues that people have in this regard. And I think most smoking people do respect others, and I'm very grateful for that. So these are some thoughts. If you have any questions about what happened in Manhattan or whatever, I'd be glad to answer them. I was not invited here tonight. I knew about the meeting through the internet, and I came on my own, and I paid my way, and I'm not getting paid by anybody to be here. So I'd like to leave you with those comments. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Chuck Allred, 130 South Bradley, Salina, Kansas. I would speak in favor of the ordinance. I look at this primarily as a public health issue as well as a workers' health issue. I feel strongly that there are rules that protect workers in a workplace. I know that they at least are said to have the freedom to find a different place to work. I think in these economic times that may be less and less of an ability, and so I would support the ordinance from that point of view.
Thank you.
Ruth Cathcart Rake, 1210 Columbine Lane here in Salina, and I also support the ordinance and hope that the City Commission votes to have it come into effect. I do also believe it is a public health issue and one that we should not ignore.
Thank you.
Phil Black, 118 East Republic. I'm the Dean of Academic Affairs at Brown Mackie College and also a member of the Board of Education for USD 305. I realize this is a complicated issue, and it would be disingenuous of me to simply say, oh, well, it's not going to be a problem for people. I know that there are going to be issues just as much as I know if somebody in that row right there moves to the right or left, the person to the next to them is going to be affected. So I'm keenly aware of that. But my background in education and my current position on the Board of Education really requires me to think about our children and their future. And to that extent, then, my focus is primarily on how this ban could positively affect our children from doing positives and negatives here. I want our children to not smoke as they get older, and I believe this ban could help do that. According to a May 2008 issue of Archives of Pediatrics and Adolescent Medicine, this was in Massachusetts. They compared towns that had strict bans and towns that did not. And youths who lived in towns with strict bans were 40% less likely to become regular smokers than in those communities with no bans or weak ones. And the findings back up the idea that smoking bans discourage tobacco use in teens, and I think this is the important part, by sending the message that smoking is frowned upon in the community. It's a community value. 40%. That could be a significant amount. Again, I know it's a complicated issue. If we vote yes for this ban, this is necessarily going to be voting in some ways for greater restrictions. In some ways, it may be voting against business freedoms or even some greater individual rights. But if you vote no, and in this I'm looking right at Mr. Peck here, Commissioner Peck, you will also be voting for smoking from my position. And it's a complicated issue both ways. As Americans, as part of our spirit, has been to try to improve the lot of our future generations. And to that extent, it will take sacrifice. It always has. And so I would say to you right now, the primary issue we're facing, and that you'll be facing, is that if we vote yes, we will have sacrifices. If we vote no, we will have sacrifices. But what I want to think about is the now and the sacrifices we make now for the sacrifices of our kids in the future. So what we want to do, I believe, with this ban is to, yes, make those sacrifices now, but knowing that in the future, and I don't think there's anybody in this room that wants children to smoke in the future. I just don't believe that. And to that end, let's make the sacrifice that will help our kids live a better and healthier life. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm another one of those out-of-towners. And I'm from Hutch, and I've owned a bar for 27 years. 85% of my customers smoke. And another 15% come in to hang around with their friends who smoke. I contributed $14,000 to the liquor excise tax for the state last year. $53,000 in payroll. I pay all my taxes. I make payments on my house. I make payments on my car. We spent a lot of time with the Hutch City Council. I know, Hutch doesn't stack up. I mean, you don't want to compare to Hutchinson when you can compare to Manhattan, which has one of the harshest smoking bans. But the Hutch City Council decided, and one member mentioned that the tactics of the anti-smoking crowd felt to him like blackmail. I mean, the constant, the pushing, and of course they're getting paid. They're getting paid with private grant money. These people are working during the day, and they're getting county tax money, but they're working with this private funding. So, I'm trying to figure out in Hutchinson, Reno County, whose time they're on, and I'm working with the county commission on this right now. The state of Kansas, with the master settlement last year, took in $200 million in tax, just the excise tax in the master settlement. What the fight that I have, and I sincerely believe, and I don't want to sound sarcastic, if these people, if there was any sincerity with the paid people, the people that work for the county, that are doing this because they have the grant money, if one of them in this whole country had come up to any city council and said, we want you to outlaw the sale of cigarettes, that's how bad that is. That's how much we believe in this. Not one has. They want little mom and pop businesses to give up their income. But they're not asking Dillon's, Quick Shops, Walgreens, Walmart, the cities, the states, the counties, or the feds. They want them to keep their money, but they want to close down little mom and pop businesses. And that's just not right. It should be, if these people want this ban, they should do it on their time, not on county time, not on tax time. They should do the legwork. They should get out in the cold and go door to door and get names on a petition. And they should put it up for a vote, I think, because they're the ones that want it. Nobody else is clamoring for it. Kids are not around smoke here. Nobody's making that lady go into a bar. And the guy from Blue Cross, for goodness sake. You know, he's talking about the Kansas Health Policy Authority. I talked to Mike O'Neill about that last week. The first thing he's going to check into is cutting back on them because the wasteful spending in that new program. That's the first thing they're going to do. So, you know, and the insurance men are wonderful people. You know, I sent the statistics up here. They're quoting their science, and of course they don't want to pay out. You know, they don't want people to be fat. They don't want people to smoke. They want people to be absolutely perfect little soldiers. So they don't have to pay out, so you can get to Social Security, and then they don't give a heck what happens to you when you get on Medicare. So, you know, I think disingenuous would describe it.
I didn't get your name.
Sheila Martin, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Sandy Vincent. I live at 213 West Bond here in Salina. I'm here on behalf of Friends of Youth Sports. We are an organization who works bingo. I have statistics here through 2008, and so far we've raised $172,355.44 for youth organizations here in Salina. We've bought uniforms, we've bought equipment, we've paid for teams to go to state tournaments. 2/3 of the people that come to bingo smoke. If this ban was to happen, the numbers are going to drop drastically, which means we can't sponsor the teams. We have 5 teams that we have proposed. We have got proposals from this year that we have committed $25,000 that we'll pay out this year. If our funds drop, we won't be able to do that. We have no employees. There's 2 employees that work in the concession stand. Other than that, all the people that work there are volunteers. In the place that we actually have it a wall up and a doorway to go into non-smoking. We try to accommodate the non-smokers. We have a fan there to blow the smoke back in. We would just like to be able to continue helping the youth here in Salina, and I'll leave this with you so that you can have our figures. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andy Persina, 1919 Simmons. First, I'm against Smoking Ordinance. Like the lady said, you know, people don't want a business, hate to shut it down. First, I don't want to see children around any smoke either, or any adults put that in their situation. You know, we have grandkids, we don't smoke around our grandkids. My wife owned a little tavern, which has been there many, many years. We only sell 3-2 beer and no food at all. So you have to be 21 to be at our bar, our tavern. And the majority of our patrons do smoke. I believe it's their right, their choice to put themselves in that situation they want to be there, not ours. They want to come in, they can come in and smoke. I've heard quotes about how little revenue has been lost when bars went to non-smoking. You don't know our patrons, there's blue-collar people that like to come in, have a cup of beers, play darts, pool, see their friends, talk, and have a cup of soup, go on home. If this ordinance continues, I guarantee we'll lose business, and our faith bartenders will lose jobs. Salina will lose revenue. I see that. Most importantly, we're losing our rights. What right we have left. I really hate to see this go to a vote, and I hope that the city commissioners can find a way to make a solution for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Carolyn Carpenter, 1413 Sherwood Lane, Salina. I don't think that you can appreciate Salina until you've lived somewhere else. My family of 7 lived in Detroit, Michigan for 10 years, and after my husband was done with his training, his journeymanship, we moved back to Salina for a safer environment. And I believe I know firsthand how tobacco use and secondhand smoke can take away your health, your life, and your family. Men who are over 60 years of age and have been heavy smokers are 3 times more likely to get pancreatic cancer. This is a fact I learned on February 1st, 2006, the day my husband of 45 years was diagnosed with cancer. On February 16th, the same year, he was gone. So I am in favor of the smoking ordinance, and I hope that this continues to be a good, healthy community for my family and my grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Bob Kraft. I live at 305 South Estates Drive. I've been a resident of Salina for about 8 years, and I'm a local family physician. As a part of my position, I also teach a smoking cessation class to third-year medical students down at KU Med in Wichita. What I've learned through my training and teaching students who are going to become doctors is that secondhand smoke is estimated to kill about 40,000 people every year in the United States. Salinans have died because of secondhand smoke. I support an ordinance that would help decrease that exposure, not only for the non-smokers, but for smokers as well. I certainly see it as a prime public health project, and is certainly well worth any loss of liberty or any business concerns that may be out there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rachel Becker, and I'm actually speaking on behalf of my sister-in-law, Denise Ward, 901 Twin Oaks. She is the owner of the Blind Pig Sports Lounge. Most of the bars in this town are small, independently owned businesses that have limited employees. These are not come in, do your shopping or eating, and have leave type businesses. They rely on people hanging out, spending time with their friends or coworkers. Banning smoking in these places will hurt these small business owners. Not only will you lose sales because customers will not stay as long, but we'll have to have extra help to enforce the ordinance, as these are the #1 types of businesses where people smoke. It will be an enforcement nightmare. One question I do have is who writes the citation? If it is the police, how is it proven? Do they have to catch them in the act? Is it by smell? What if someone lights up and we told them to put it out, but the smell lingered? How is this going to be enforced? Is it one person's word against another, or is it the business owner guilty until proven innocent? Is this not against our rights? Speaking from her standpoint, I run the Blind Pig Sports Lounge for her. This is her only source of income, and it is my source of income for my children. The only people that do patronize this bar are 21 and older. We're not directly affecting minors. I'm not against the ordinance. I worked for a restaurant for 11 years, and it was a corporate-owned restaurant. And I agreed with the ordinance for the smoking ban in the restaurants. But as far as bars go, we don't have minors in there. They're all consenting adults. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kitty Russell, 512 Woodlawn Avenue, and I'm speaking in favor of the ordinance. I'd like to say that when you do go to, I'm a person that does like to go to the bars, but I do not like to go to a smoking environment. I grew up with exercise-induced asthma, and now when I go to a smoking bar, it will trigger my asthma, tension in my chest, and things like that. So I don't like to go to those bars. I do notice that with my friends that have tried to quit, when we go to a bar, that's when they start quitting or start smoking again. So recently I have my college roommate quit for 4 months, and then when she returned to a bar with me one evening, she was like, oh, I'll just have one cigarette, and it's been 3 months now that she's been smoking again. So she had tried to quit, and the bar reinforced her to start again. Another thing is bar choices was something that was brought up last time. Salina does have 3 non-smoking bars, and I know of 3. So those are the ones that I would go to. But the bar choices, 3 bars is not a broad choice. There are good bars in Salina that offer great things, such as the Blind Pig is the only bar in Salina that offers Race Talk Live. I love to go to Race Talk Live, and I love to listen to it on the radio. They tape it there live at the Blind Pig. I have family members who bring my niece, who is now 3 years old, to the Blind Pig, and they sit on the patio and listen to Race Talk Live and discuss with the other racers that are there. I also know that my niece's babysitters are 15 and 17, and they will go to the Blind Pig and also sit on the patio because racing for them is a family issue. Race Talk Live is supposed to be about the racer and things like that. So they will want to go to that bar, but it's a smoking bar, so they're not, I don't want to go there. I would love to go there, but I just won't do it because of the smoking. I'd have to walk in through the door to go out to the patio and things like that. Another one is, if you're a cowboy in Salina, where do you go? You go to Outlaws. So if you want to dance and you're in Salina, I'm sorry, there is one really good place to dance, country style dance. That's it. It's a smoking bar. You don't have another choice. If you want to go and get jiggy with it and you're not a country dancer, you want to, bump and grind or something like that, you go to the Groove. You go to Big Nose. Kate's used to have a dance floor. It's now covered with a pool table. But there's no other places to go and bump and grind. It's, sorry, a smoking bar. If you want to go and play pool, Sunset Billiards, Big Nose Kate's have pool tables. The rest of the bars in Salina, only the non-smoking ones, only offer 1 to 2 pool tables, which if you are in there with a lot of people, the chances of you getting to play pool that night, if you did not get there before 8:30, 9 o'clock, is slim to none. You're not going to get to play pool. You have to go to Sunset Billiards or Big Nose Kate's to actually get a pool table, and those are both smoking bars. So the choices are just not available for the non-smoking bars. If you want to go play pool, if you want to go dance, if you want to watch Race Talk Live and be there actually interacting with those people, you got to go to a smoking bar. That's it.
Thank you.
My name's Charles Kirby. I live at 601 West Arm. My mom didn't drink or smoke, and she died of cancer. She never hung around anybody that smoked or drank. And the way I look at it, it ought to be up to the business owners if they allow smoking in there or not. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir.
My name's John Jarvis. I reside at 37 Crestview in Salina. And I've been going to the bar since 1966, although I pretty much don't drink anymore. But it seems to me that there should be a compromise here to make most people happy. The bars that we're talking about at the north end, or the Blind Pig, the one down south, people like to smoke, drink, relax. You know, it's kind of like a hobby to some people. Should we ban golf? No. I'm worried about individual rights. And I don't think the city has the right to tell me
that I can't smoke in bars. Now, at the bowling alley, if there's any place kids are around, I agree. You know, no smoking. But the bars are for adults, and it's their own choice. And if the city starts putting demands on us, they've already done it once and got it passed, but I just don't think it's right. There has to be a compromise. So outdoors at the stadiums or whatever, at the bowling alley, fine, don't smoke, public buildings. But don't hurt the people that enjoy going to bars to relax and have a beer or two and smoke. That seems like a logical answer to me. And what else was I going to say? If a compromise like that is reached, I think it'll be acceptable to everybody, and we won't have to have, you know, the bitterness between the two. So that's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Marlon Lauber. I live at 710 North 2nd here in town. My occupation, I am an auto detailer and or appliance detailer. But I am going to tell you truthfully that with this issue, I am against the smoking ban on the following grounds. It violates various parts of the Bill of Rights of the Constitution of the United States of America. It also violates similar statutes within the Constitution of the state of Kansas. And if the president's trend continues of taking people's rights away from them, my theory is this: we shouldn't have any right to fly the red, white, and blue. Instead, they should haul up the old blood red banner of the USSR in its place. Because if we're going to lose rights, and this is one of the things that I strongly oppose, is the loss of people's rights, then it isn't any good for the people. In fact, I can honestly tell you that from what I have seen, being in and around the town, that this particular ordinance is going to cause considerably more chaos than it will good. And it may even lead to a few unpleasant situations. I'm hoping not to see that, but I can, in my mind's eye, see this. I think that what you ought to do is to let the individual businesses at this point decide what they're going to do. It is possible to go ahead and rig an area in a building where the smoke can be kept in one area and non-smokers can be in another area of the same building. That can be done by using the ventilation equipment in certain ways. But as far as taking people's rights away from them, you know, like the business owners and the ordinary citizens, I'm afraid I can't side with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Fran Swisher, and I live at 3665 East Country Club. I moved here in April from Colorado. I've heard all of these arguments. I've heard the doom and gloom. And the businesses didn't close in Colorado. They continued. What we failed to ask is, if we're focusing on the smokers who won't be able to smoke in the bars and probably won't come. What we haven't said is, what about all those other people who aren't showing up in the bars because they're smoking? I have heard that there is no smoking in the restaurants in Salina, but it seems to me that that ordinance currently is, except for certain hours. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So if you are there as those hours end, you are in a smoking restaurant. The bowling alley has certain hours that they can smoke and certain hours that they cannot. I have been in there after an evening of heavy smoking bowling. I've come in the next morning. That place is full of smoke. I have been there when children are there while they're smoking. Yeah, you can say to the parents, well, keep them at home. A lot of parents aren't doing that, partly because they cannot afford to go out and get babysitters. We are exposing children to smoke. We are exposing non-smokers to smoke. We are setting up big problems. I have seen more medical personnel standing outside the hospitals smoking in Salina than I have seen for years in Colorado. And we had medical people come and speak to us today. What happened in Colorado that I saw was when the state said, we're going to limit the smoking, everybody seemed to get the message. That doesn't mean there's no smoking in Colorado, but it seemed that the mindset changed. I do have one question. What happens in an apartment building if there's no smoking in the hallways, but one apartment has smoking and the next one doesn't? Because I watched this in Colorado. Who is responsible for making sure that the smoke from one apartment does not go into the next? I don't see that covered in the ordinance.
May have to refer to our legal counsel. I'm expecting that each individual unit would be considered a place of residence.
So it would be up to the apartment owner then to make sure that no smoke goes from one place to the next.
Yes.
And that would be a cost. But the apartment owner does have the right to say this is a non-smoking apartment.
Yeah, certainly I believe today apartment owner can establish certain regulations or rules for their apartment building, so this wouldn't affect that.
Thank you.
My name's William Peterson. I live 229 South 2nd, Apartment 2. And some of these people that talk about they'd be willing to give up a little liberty and stuff, but me, no. I'm going to quote, I don't know, I think it's Benjamin Franklin, something that I agree with. I don't know if I'll get to last a little bit, but they may not like the ending because I may have changed it, but it says, anyone that gives up a little liberty for security is a fool. Stuff, because I don't smoke. I used to. It started in my throat, so I quit. It's easy. I'm sorry it's hard for others. But it was taking away my choice to go in. If I want to go to a bar and they're smoking, it's my choice to go into there. And you call these public places. They are not. They're private businesses where the public's invited in, basically, to spend their money. Public place is any place the government owns. Because basically, by the government own it, that means the people own it, and stuff. And should be very clear that they're not public places. And they talk in the paper they had for as a public health issue for the health department said, no, the public health part comes when they warn us about smoking. They warn us about secondhand smoke, and then after that, it's up to the individual person's choice whether they go around smoking or whether they smoke. And that's where the health department stuff ends, like in the restaurants. We can't see into the kitchen, so they got to go in there and inspect to make sure everything's okay. But for smoking, everyone just have them put up a sign that says smoking's allowed in here or something, because then people can decide whether to go in there or not. It should be left up to the people to choose themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name's Janet Wood, and I live at 148 Florida Avenue. I think, I commend the gentleman who was able to quit smoking and it was not a problem. Smoking is an addiction. I smoked. It was hard to quit. I think anyone who would argue that smoking is not a health issue, with all the information that we know nowadays, would just, I'm sorry, that's just really an ignorant statement to make. I have children, I have grandchildren. I know the statistics of being around, if your parents smoke, you're more likely to smoke cigarettes. I've read all this, I know. I know a lot of people who smoke, but I know very few of them who wish that they could quit. Most of them don't want to smoke, but they realize the addiction of it. I don't think that to weigh the economy with health, to me there is just no equation. It would be nice think that we're all going to do what's right. And everybody has a different definition of what's right. I asked my son this evening, who will be 16 in March, what was his opinion of this? And what he said, and he asked me why I was asking him. I said, because you're the future of our community, and I want to know what you think. You have a right to what you think. And he said, well, I think that everybody should vote on the issue. And so then that does give everybody the chance to get their opinion out there. You have a right. It's not saying that you can't or you can't. I mean, you know, we have to be governed by some rules. That's just the way it is in life. But I think if maybe even some concession to some of the bars, I don't know the magic answer, but I think if we're going to talk about rights in the sense, I think an election is the way to go.
Thank you.
Earl Graybill, 2218 Wesley. I own Santa Fe Phillies and Subs and the Rendezvous. I'm not going to stand up here and try and spew out any statistics because, as Mr. Peck pointed out the other night, you can't get caught up on that because they can go either way. So what it comes down to is you got to ask yourself as a society, where is the line? Are we willing to cross this line now and say, okay, it's a public health issue? 20 years from now, is it going to be that the population's so great, food short, where we say, you know, those are natural resources. That farm that's been in your family for 100 years isn't yours anymore. We're going to tell you what to produce, you can still live on it. Property rights is the issue here, not public health. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Scott Sear, 332 Sites. I speak to you as a board member of the Central Kansas Foundation, and I speak to you as the director of the new Salina Healthy Lifestyles initiative at the Saline County Commission on Aging. But mostly, I speak to you from the heart. My sister Deborah died of lung cancer in 2004. She was 52. I thank the city for its work on strengthening our smoking ban ordinance. The harmful effects of secondhand smoke are widely known. As the Surgeon General's report states, there is no safe level of exposure, and the deaths of some 50,000 non-smokers each year can be tied to the smoke they involuntarily inhale. Children are especially at risk. I applaud the commissioners for recognizing the health hazards of secondhand smoke. I urge the commissioners to approve on second reading the more expansive smoking ban ordinance. Don't fall for the smoke and mirrors argument that smoking is an individual rights issue, as we've heard tonight. The greater concern is public health. A more appropriate way to look at the rights issue is this: do smokers and those who condone smoking in public places have a right to endanger the health of others? They do not. Consider, too, that some non-smokers lack a practical option for removing themselves from smoke-filled rooms. Employees, for one example. Children, for another. For guidance on this issue, we can turn even to Philip Morris USA, the cigarette maker. Here's what the company says on its website, and I quote, "The conclusions of public health officials concerning environmental tobacco smoke are sufficient to warrant measures that regulate cigarette smoking in public places." Salina was a Kansas leader in 2002 when our limited smoking ban was approved. With that, we gave other communities in the state the wisdom and courage to pass their own smoking ordinances, and our image as a health-conscious, caring community was enhanced. We can further polish our image now by strengthening our smoking ban, and I strongly urge the Commission to do so.
Thank you.
My name is Trent Davis, 2145 Hillside Drive. In looking around the room at people's facial expressions and gestures, I'm still getting the feeling that a lot of people don't believe that first and second-hand smoke is a health problem. Somehow this entity of people's rights, personal rights to smoke have come up. I don't believe that's written anywhere in the Bill of Rights. But even if we say there is this mythical right to smoke, rights in a large society cost. Unfortunately, they cost dollars. And someone is picking up the tab of the cost of smoking. You know, for the money that the state brings in tax revenue for tobacco, it's spending 3 times as much for health care related to tobacco illnesses. That's $1 billion. Now, the money that is raised at the bingo, it's very good, but one heart attack wipes out that amount of money in about 2 weeks. And that's if the person's not very sick. So somewhere along the line, we're all paying for these, either through higher insurance premiums so that we make up for the hospital's losses for uninsured, or through Medicaid. Somewhere somebody's got to pay for this cost. The issue of limiting this to places where children go, I think, has inbred fallacy, and that adults are just as important to protect as children. This ordinance is to protect employees. A lot of employees in the businesses that have been described here do not have much in the way of choices of other places to work. A lot of college kids have to work in bars to make money. A lot of persons, and I hate to overgeneralize, do not have insurance. Many of these employees do not have insurance. So when they get sick, all of us are going to pay for their health care in some form or fashion. Even they're paying out of their pocket money that could be used for other purposes. When adults don't smoke around their kids, there's this belief that, oh, well, the kids don't know I smoke. You know, we've all caught our kids coming in after they've had a drink, that first drink when they're 18. We can tell that they've had alcohol, even though we don't see them drinking it. Kids can smell the smoke. So we're not really providing a good role model for our children by telling them that this is an acceptable thing to do. I have not seen many people who have pushed for business and property owners' rights and smokers' rights who are not smokers. And I think the bigger driving force and issue here is addiction to tobacco. And this ordinance is not dealing with that. Ultimately, our society will have to deal with that. And it may take regulation. I mean, thank God we do have some government regulation. Otherwise, our food wouldn't be labeled to let us know when it's spoiled. We'd have a lot of smog. Asbestos and DDT would be floating around. So regulation is not a bad thing. But I want to close with an example of what secondhand smoke does. And it's related to an industry that, in theory, would have less secondhand smoke exposure than a bar. It's a medical practice. As a physician, I treat people all day long, and though we have only 23% of our population, I think, adult population that smokes, the percentage of people who come in to see doctors is much higher than that, which should be a clue that there's something wrong. But if a heavy smoker comes in, and sometimes it doesn't have to be very heavy, just a half a pack a day smoker, sometimes my exam room is so filled with smoke that my asthma flares up. I can't use the room. The next patient won't want to go in the room. So I have an exam room I can't use for a while. After the patient leaves, and these are people who haven't smoked probably for at least 20 minutes before they've come in to see me. They think they are not smoking because the last cigarette was a long time ago. I have to go take an inhaler, walk around outside for a while. Do I charge the patient for my money? I mean, for my medication? I should, because it costs me to see that person. But I don't. That's a cost that I eat. And I don't think that is fair to have to put my own life in jeopardy to treat other people, particularly when it's something that can be prevented. Now, I'm working in just a medical office. I don't have people sitting in the rooms blowing smoke on me all day long. You can imagine what happens to people who actually work in these environments. But it is, secondhand smoke is a real entity. This ordinance starts in our community's mindset towards thinking preventive health. We're running out of money in this country to keep treating illness as it occurs. We've got to start getting in a preventive mode. I've lived in places where ordinances have existed. I can assure every bar owner in here who has a place worth going to, the cigarettes are not the major reason those folks are coming there. They will keep showing up. Very few bars close down as a result of ordinances like this. In fact, you'll probably get some people who would not have come in otherwise because of the smoke. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Teresa Wardine at 907 South 9th Street here in Salina. And I just wanted to give the opportunity to voice my opinion of the ordinance, and I'm in favor of the ordinance. I think it's going to be positive. Other people who come to Salina will see that we want to be positive and we want to be healthy, and we do care about our children and our community. And I think the benefits will outweigh all the arguments of what people think we need for smoking. So once again, I do agree with the ordinance.
Thank you.
My name is Jerry Vargas, 1417 Ponca, Salina. I've lived here all my life, born and raised here. I don't smoke. I have several friends that do smoke, family members that smoke. I frequent the bars occasionally, and I'm a member of some private clubs as well. I don't see what's wrong with the ordinance right now. I mean, we don't have smoking in the restaurants from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the evening. People say, well, the smoke lingers, so on and so forth. Well, maybe the owners, maybe you should mention that to your owners of the places that you do go to eat, and they can ventilate their systems a little bit better, maybe update the bowling alleys as well. I know that they smoke in the bowling alleys. I used to bowl. I don't care for the smoke myself, but if I choose to bowl, I put up with it. You know, to me, it is a rights issue. I mean, you should have the right to make up your mind where you want to go and where you don't want to go. You know, and that's really all I've got. I mean, I just think that, you know, there's nothing wrong with the ordinance the way it is, but trying to go stricter on it without giving the people a chance to vote on it or something like that, I don't believe in it. I think it's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Mallory Offert. I live 1605 Republic here. I've only lived in Salina for a few months, but I lived in Lawrence for 2 years. Their smoking ban went into effect July 1st of '04, and I really enjoyed the atmospheres of, you know, I wasn't old enough to get into bars, but me and my family could go out and not have to smell the smoking section beside us. And, you know, we went out for my sister's 21st birthday. They went out to bars, and, you know, my parents went, my parents' friends went, and they all had a really good time because they didn't have to put up with the smoke. You know, everyone here is talking about rights, and I believe that we should consider the smokers' rights as well, but what about my right as a non-smoker? You know, what about me having to choose where I can go because I don't want to have to put up with the smoke. I don't want to have to leave with a headache or smell like I just rolled in an ashtray when I get home. So, you know, I think it should be put to a vote. I think everyone should get their chance to voice their opinion, but I'm for the smoking ban. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Susie Dreyer. I live at 718 North 7th Street, and I'm against it because, for one, I've worked at various employment places where they have had designated smoking areas, and you see so many people that do not smoke go to them smoking areas because their friends are all there. You go to bars and that, they go there because their friends are there. So if you ban the smoking, then where's everybody going to go? You know, and where's the smoking people are going to go? Next, it's going to be in our vehicles, in our homes. You know, we don't have any rights anymore. You know, are we going to be able to smoke in our own homes anymore, or in your vehicle? You know.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Owens, and I live at 332 West Cloud here in Salina. I've been a resident here for 33 years. I am not paid to stand up here. I have no grants. I am here as a citizen, and the other day I had all the petitions that were with me, and you know, there was over 1,000 votes on there that actually backed me for standing here. First of all, like I said the other day, we're not Manhattan, we're not Lawrence, we're Salina. Yes, as adults, we do have a way to protect our children from that which we feel is harmful to themselves. That's the reason why we put age limits on such things as driving, drinking, smoking, and we've even put a curfew on our children in Salina. As parents, we pray that we have actually guided our children to make proper decisions. By the time our children turn 18, they are adults now. They have the right to choose whether they want to pick up a pack of cigarettes, whether they want to drive nuts all over the road, whether, you know, which is still an illegal thing, kids shouldn't do that, but they're considered an adult at 18, and they actually have the right to choose. The way I feel that we're being treated, I feel like we're being treated as children, and all these people are trying to end up being like our parents, like we've, you know, grown up somehow terrible people because we have a right to choose. They have their right to choose. We should have our right to choose. Anyway, I believe that as adult bars, the business owners should have the right to choose for themselves how they want to run their business. We do have smoking and non-smoking bars, and there are 5 bars in Salina that are non-smoking. Now, one thing, if you want that little discotheque club or that country club, go open your own bar. If that is an option, you might be able to make some money by doing that. You know, by having another establishment to create competition in town, which would actually create more money in the community of Salina. I really don't think that was a friend if they knew that you had a health problem and they're blowing smoke in your face. I wouldn't consider that a friend. We do need to educate our children, and that as adults is what we should be doing. I have 2 children. I did not smoke with my children. I gave my children the rights. Yes, my children know I smoke. They know that I smoke, and I do not smoke in the house. I choose to go to places where I am able to smoke, so I keep them away from it. I educate my children daily on not smoking because I'm a responsible adult that can teach my children the difference between right and wrong. I don't need to shove it down their throat. I can educate them from my own personal experiences and the things that I tell them. If my children choose at 18 in order to smoke, that is their God-given right to smoke. I don't agree with it, but they are allowed to, because that is what makes this country so individual, is being able to have the right to choose. I don't know what else I was going to tell you. The other thing is I've noticed we've had an awful lot of talk about respiratory problems. One thing that I've noticed a lot about the homes in Salina from actually renting is there is a lot of black mold. I actually came down here to the city building in order to let them know that the landowner that I was renting from had black mold in the house. He wouldn't do anything about it. They said they didn't know anything about black mold. Needless to say, my children, and remember, I do not smoke around them, ended up having respiratory problems and everything else. And when I moved out of that house with the black mold and moved to a house that did not have black mold, that's when they start clearing up. My kids didn't need inhalers, and my kids are perfectly fine now. They do not go to the doctors whatsoever now because they are perfectly happy and healthy. They're very well taken care of. And I think that they need to actually look into the black mold issue a little bit more. Anyway, I'm going to ramble if I stand up here any longer, but I would really love it if you guys would actually consider this is actually a business owner's choice, and they actually have the choice also to end up opening up their own establishments if they fail to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Dale Myers, and I live at 2534 DeSole. And I would just like to speak to secondhand smoke as a public health issue, not a rights issue. Exposure to secondhand smoke is a leading cause of heart disease and cancer, and we know that. And people have the right to work in a workplace that is free from this health hazard. People have the right to smoke, but not in ways that harm other people. Just like people have the right to drink, if they get behind the wheel, that could harm other people. They're not allowed to do that. When people smoke in public places, they affect the health of everyone around them. And it's not only appropriate for local governments to help protect the community's health, it's part of their duty. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else interested in providing any comments? Sure.
Fran Swisher, somebody got up and said something about if you enter a restaurant during non-smoking hours and there's still smoke there, the restaurant owners need to do something about ventilation. If you have been in places where there is a lot of smoking, you know that smoke and I guess it's tar, I don't know what it is, but it will permeate everything. And if you've been in a house where people have smoked for a long time, the yellow goo that's on the wall and in the ceilings, that comes from the cigarettes, that's not a matter of ventilation. And that's not something that goes away the minute you open the door and turn on the fans and say, now there's no more smoking for the next 6 hours or 10 hours or whatever it is. It permeates everything. It's not a matter of turn on the fans and it'll work. When somebody suggested that we could do bingo and have 2 rooms and people could be in the other, that's one of the reasons that people stopped having smoking and non-smoking areas in restaurants, because it's not as simple as we'll just have different areas, we'll have different fans, we'll have it takes over. So it takes a whole lot more than just we'll designate areas. And as far as the bingo for fundraising, I've worked with children for years and years and years. I would have a hard time justifying to my children who were benefiting from the fact that I was getting their money for this from a place where adults were smoking, and then turn around and say to those children, but we're going to have you in sports so that you won't smoke. There's something wrong with that message there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else interested in providing any comments?
Can you go twice?
Sure.
I'm sorry, but I keep hearing from the doctors and everybody about the 50,000 people that die every year, and you didn't want stats, but you've been getting them, and a lot of them. The study that came out by Glantz, it says, since the public was not terribly incensed about the only 3,000 deaths, Glantz did another meta-analysis, which was published in the journal circulation in 91 and republished in the Journal of American Medical Association in 95. Of the 12 studies on fatal myocardial events used by Glance's review, 8 showed no statistically significant risk for ETS exposure to non-smokers. Of the 11 studies covering non-fatal myocardial events, 10 showed to failed to show a significant link. Relying heavily on questionable research about a tiny increase in arterial deposits, Glantz came to the conclusion that if a non-smoker exposed to secondary smoke had a 20% increase in arterial deposits, then 20% of the 1 million heart disease deaths each year must be attributed to secondary smoke. Disregarding the concept of threshold, he wrote a massive paper on it, and his conclusions have been used since to claim more than 50,000 deaths. Realizing the flimsy basis for such a claim, no agency of the U.S. government, including the EPA and the CDC, has officially endorsed Glantz's misrepresentation of the facts. However, even with this most blatant misuse of science, the American Heart Association still uses Glantz's biased figure of 50,000 deaths a year, as does the anti-smoking cartel of NGOs, pharmaceutical companies, once respected charities, and paid professional anti-smoking activists. Thanks. I can leave this.
That's fine, thank you.
Oh, let me write this address down.
My name is Leonard Dahl. I'm a 42-year resident of Salina. I've owned and operated the Hideaway as a tavern and a club for 42 years. This all reminds me of government overhandedness. When I was a youth at 17 years old, I enlisted in the U.S. Air Force. I raised my hand and swore to uphold the Constitution. The first order I received was, light 'em if you've got 'em. In other words, the government was pushing to me to smoke. When I got onto an airplane with my flight crew, they sent us a sack lunch with cigarettes in it. The commissary made special provisions for us to have cigarettes while we were flying. You found it in K-rations. Now time has developed, and we all realize, and I'm a smoker, and I wish I weren't. I really do. And I wouldn't wish it a curse on anyone. But still, I feel I do have the right to smoke. If you don't like what I am doing, stay away. I will be glad to put a sign up on the front door of my business which says, smokers welcome, non-smokers welcome, but beware of the smoke. The same way I would put up a sign, beware of the dog. Now, I consider a lot of this, as the statistics show, there's grounds for it, but I think that they are exaggerating to a great degree. As far as personal rights, I feel I have a right as a businessman to conduct my business in the best way that I know. Now, if you don't agree with the way I run my business, stay away. I'm not forcing you to come into my establishment. If you come in, I will do everything in my power to make you comfortable. 6 years ago, I spent 1.5 years of my income to clean up the smoke, to clean up the atmosphere. And evidently, this isn't enough to suit some people. So, in all of this debate, please, please consider the rights of the smoker. We may be a minority, but this country was based on minority rights. And that's all we're asking for, is the right of the minority.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Once, twice? Okay, we'll go ahead and conclude. I do want to remind everyone that we do have a forum on the 20th, which is Tuesday of next week, right here, 6:30. If you have friends or family that could make it and are interested, please let them know. Final action is expected to be scheduled to be on the 26th of this month, and the City Commission will formally take this up. All the comments you provided this evening and those that we get at the next forum will be provided to the City Commissioners, so they will get your comments. I want to thank everyone again for coming out. I know it's cold, and I really appreciate the effort that's been made here, and I appreciate all the comments. They're very, very helpful, so have a safe trip home. Thank you.